Hey everyone, today I just wanted to make a video about which characters I think would be in support of Palestinians and their struggle for freedom. First up, and this is gonna be a little similar to the previous video I made, which is about which Marvel characters would join ICE agency. There are differences. This one's also got a little bit of a different criteria, so yeah, let's get started. Adam Warlock would be apolitical or missing. He's not usually on Earth. So, yeah. Hank Pym would probably also be one of the apolitical people who likes to not get involved or whatever. You know, the privilege of being apolitical is something that Hank Pym definitely has. We got Anti-Venom, and he is a good guy, at least this image that we're seeing, this time period, his origins. I think he'd go into protecting protesters, perhaps sabotage, maybe on the front lines if he's able to heal people. So if he is a healer, um, yeah, front lines. Apocalypse, he would probably be enjoying all of this death and destruction. I'm not sure. He's not exactly involved in the political landscape of the Marvel Universe. We got Beast, and if it was Dark Beast, we all know where he'd be going, but most likely he'd be in diplomacy. We got Beta Ray Bill, and he's usually not on Earth and unaware of what's going on, and space has a lot of issues in the Marvel Universe. Next up, we got Black Cat. She's also going into sabotage. The sabotage section is going to be very similar to the previous section because, well, you know, Um, that being said, I'd say Black Panther would be in the diplomacy aspect. I don't think he would risk getting Wakanda involved in a third world war, but he definitely would not be happy with what's going on. We got Black Widow, and she would definitely be in sabotage. Um, um, yeah, we got Blade, and he would definitely be in protecting protesters. Cable, if he's here, he's coming from the future and shit's really messed up. And yeah, I think he'd be on the front lines unless he was trying to change something crucial that was happening somewhere else in the world that would lead to the same outcome that he's looking for. Captain America would also be on the front lines. He'd be leading the charge. Despite being Captain America, I don't think he'd be happy with this. If he woke up in 2025 or something instead of whenever he has been waking up in the sliding time scale of Marvel Comics, I think he'd basically believe that the war never ended and that it was like Hydra. He cut off one head and a couple more took place, and now they're basically terrorizing the entire world. Captain Britain, I definitely think he'd be in martial law, at least in his country. He would be helping the police essentially arrest Holocaust survivors who are protesting what's happening, the genocide in Gaza. So, yeah, I think he is representative of his country more so than Captain America is. Carol Danvers would be in martial law as well because she just likes to be a military person. Carnage would straight up join the IDF because it gives him a license to kill. Um, Colossus, he'd be protecting the protesters and civilians and whatnot in his. He lives in America, but in the country, essentially. We got Crossbones, he would also join the IDF. He did work alongside Sin, the daughter of the Red Skull. So, yeah. In this particular context, I think Cyclops would only be protecting protesters, although I can see him wanting to do sabotage. There's the perspective that because of what happened on Genosha, he would basically not be able to help himself but get involved in international conflict. But it's more likely that he'd be protecting the civilians and locals wherever he is living, which tends to be with Charles Xavier in the professor's mansion. I think Daredevil would be trying his best with international law, but he is a smaller scale lawyer. unlike someone like She-Hulk. So I'd say he'd be in protecting protesters, maybe sabotage, because he does get his hands a bit more dirty than the rest of the Marvel universe. Deadpool, I'd like to say protecting protesters, but I don't think he'd even be aware of it, of all of the things that are going on in the rest of the world. Doctor Doom, I do think he'd be diplomatic. Maybe he'd invade and settle the conflict. I'm not sure, but he definitely would not approve the ongoing genocide. Doctor Strange, in character, he's just unaware and somewhere else, or he doesn't care. Um, I think this one's pretty easy. Domino would be in sabotage. Dormammu is definitely unaware of what's happening on Earth. Yeah, you can just say these two are clubbed together. Captain America would insist he's apolitical, at least Sam Wilson's version of Cap. Yeah, nothing more to that. He just wouldn't interfere. Yeah, Galactus would be unaware. Gambit would be protecting protesters or perhaps sabotaging because he's got all those explosive skills. Gamora would be unaware. Ghost Rider, I think he'd be on the front lines because the penance stare is a rather appropriate tool to be used in this particular context. Although there's an argument to be made that not all evil people recognize their actions are evil and therefore gain immunity to the stare. The Green Goblin would probably be sending missiles to Israel. Yeah. Groot, he would not be aware of anything. Hawkeye, I'd like to say on the front lines, but more likely sabotage. Hela, she would be actively involved in this because she wants more people to die. Her domain expands, whatever. The Hulk, unlike my whole spiel about the ice, which Marvel characters support ice, I would say Hulk would definitely be on the front lines this time. And Human Torch, because he'd be working with his sister, would be in the sabotage category. Iceman would go into protecting protesters, just like most of the other X Men, because the X Men aren't as involved in international conflict than they are in local conflicts or mutant related conflicts. Iron Fist would be protecting protesters. Iron Man, again, this is a little different. This time I'm pretty sure he'd be on the front lines. Although there's a good chance he might be in the diplomacy section because he does have a giant company. If it was Tony Stark before Iron Man, I think he'd be in the war criminals and war profiteers section. But I'm gonna go ahead and put him on the front lines. Riri Williams would be in sabotage because she's really smart, and yeah, Jean Grey would go into protecting protesters. Same thing with Jessica Jones. See now, the Juggernaut. I don't know if you guys know, he's been a good guy in the recent comics. He joined the X-Men and all that. So I would say he'd go into protecting protesters. If not, if we're talking about old Juggernaut, I'd say he'd be in martial law because he would enjoy getting the ability to cause chaos and wreak havoc and whatnot. The Kingpin, definitely war criminal and war profiteer. If this is Mayor of New York Kingpin, he would be in martial law. Craven the Hunter, I think he'd join the IDF because, again, license to kill. Loki, um, yeah, I would say he'd be in sabotage just for the fun of it. I don't think he'd care too much about the conflict itself, but if he's trying to be a good guy like his brother Thor, he would definitely try to help out whatever way he can. Luke Cage would definitely be in protecting protesters. If he's mayor of New York, I'd say diplomacy. Yeah, Magneto would 100% be on the front lines. It doesn't matter if the people who share the same religion as him are now the bad guys and are committing genocide alongside other nations and groups of people. He would take a hard stand. Like he said, he's been at the mercy of men just following orders all his life. Never again. He would take it quite literally, and he would be against any form of genocide. I know he doesn't care for human beings as much as he does mutant kind, except for the new comics where he's been redeemed further. But the thing is, mutants, there'd be plenty of mutants in Palestine as well that he would care about. Murdoch, 100% advanced idea, mechanics, or whatever, aim, technology, all of those guys, they're just analogs for modern tech companies. So, yeah. Moon Knight would be protecting protesters because he protects people in the night. Uh, Reed, I think this time he'd be apolitical. If Sue and he were trying to make it work, he'd be in the diplomacy section. But he'd be the kind who'd say, I don't want to get involved, you know? I just want to do my science. So what if the science is funded by the blood of children? Alright, we got Miss Marvel, and if she is unable to leave New Jersey, I would say protecting protesters and sabotage. But if she can go to Palestine, I think she'd be on the front lines. Mysterio, if we're interpreting him as a decent human being, I'd say he'd be going into sabotage. Depending on what you think of Mysterio, he might be an apolitical, maybe war criminals or war profiteers. Unlikely, but I think he'd be in sabotage. Mystique as well. She could do a lot of good with her powers or a lot of evil. Namor, he would definitely be on the front lines, similar to Cap, Bucky, and so on. He was part of the invaders who invaded Germany and fought in World War II, so he would fight alongside Captain America, or he'd be apolitical. Nebula would be completely unaware of what's happening. Nick Fury, he'd be in martial law. Unfortunately, Shield would be forced to capitulate to the global um, leaders, I suppose you can call it. I think if Kurt Wagner was aware of how important he is, he would be on the front lines rescuing people left, right, and center. Nightmare, this time I think he would be involved because, well, it's in the name. It's a fucking nightmare. I think he'd be trying to gain energy and power off of the chaos that's being seeded. If he was aware. If he wasn't aware, maybe Doctor Strange is taking care of him and making sure Nightmare doesn't get too powerful. That's why Doctor Strange is MIA. The whole point of this exercise in ranking which characters would be likely to support X, Y, or Z is the idea that we can create stories and know where to place these characters in a global event or a national event. It's very similar to Civil War and all the many events Marvel has made. But you give them a role, you see their understanding, you see where they fit in. It's a writer's fun game. It's just an experiment. We got Nova. I don't think he'd be aware. No. Charles Xavier, diplomacy. Frank Castle, definitely protecting protesters or sabotage. I doubt he would leave the country. Otherwise, he would be on the front lines because he watched his family die, including his children. And if he got to see the videos of the many children who are being murdered on a daily basis in Gaza, I don't think he'd be ready to accept that. Quicksilver would be on the front lines, saving people and supporting his father and the other heroes. Red Skull, I mean, it's so obvious. Then we got Rocket Raccoon, and he would not be aware. Same with Ronan the Accuser. Rogue would be on the front lines most likely, although Sabotage, her, and Gambit can do a lot of damage. We got Sabretooth, my bad, I make this mistake every time. I think that's Old Man Logan. And Sabretooth would definitely join the IDF or be in martial law, but IDF makes more sense because he gets a license to kill. Of course, I know they're not gonna be able to join the IDF, but if they were given the chance, they would, is all I'm trying to say. We got Scarlet Witch, and she would be alongside her brother trying to save people on the front lines. Jennifer Walters, I think it would be an amazing character arc if there was like a breaking point. Maybe this was just too much and she decided that the law isn't working and she went and fought on the front lines alongside Bruce. But realistically, she's a great lawyer. She would be trying to do everything she can to make sure international law brings an end to this. We got Shocker. I think he'd be ignorant and just minding his own business. He's a small time guy after all, technically. Um, Shuri would definitely be on sabotage. Now, Silver Surfer, I don't know. I'm gonna go ahead and put him in apolitical, but if he was aware of it, he'd be pretty angry and disappointed on what humans are doing with our second chance after he saved us from Galactus. Spider Gwen would be protecting protesters, and so would Mr. Parker. We got Star Lord, and he would not be aware, nor would he really care. Storm would straight up be on the front lines. The Skrulls would be maintaining a low profile amongst all this or trying to gain power in the chaos. Surtur would be unaware. Um, Taskmaster would definitely try to join the IDF. Thanos would not be aware of what's going on. The Thing would be out there protecting protesters. Thor would be on the front lines. Ultron would be in martial law because he would recognize how fast we're destroying the planet, whether it be simply through the bombs we drop and the climate change that's being exacerbated, or whatever the word is. You know the word I'm thinking about. And he'd basically be like, yeah, here's all my advanced AI tech. Use it to kill people. And yeah, he basically is a perfect metaphor character for Palantir and Elon Musk's satellites and all the other tools by Google and Microsoft that have enabled the murder of innocent people in the Middle East. Venom would also be in protecting protesters. Yeah. Um, I could see Vision. He would be on diplomacy. He is a very robotic individual. He would care, but he would be on the diplomacy angle. Yeah, most likely. War Machine would definitely be helping with the martial law. You know, Wasp would be in sabotage. She is extremely smart, rich, and capable. So, because she can shrink and fly and all that. Bucky would definitely be on the front lines. Wolverine would likely be there, but I'd say sabotage because I don't know if he'd be leaving the country. And and by that logic, I'd say Anti-Venom should end up in protecting protesters as well, I guess. Yeah. And Yellow Jacket would definitely be profiting off of death of innocent people, and Yondu wouldn't even be aware. I'm sorry about the few characters in both the lists that were almost irrelevant to this topic, but there's just a tier thing I found on, yeah, tiermaker.com. It's right there. And it's pretty good. It's got like 80 characters or something. So, this is what I think the political spectrum regarding the conflict in Gaza. Although conflict is not the appropriate word, the ongoing genocide in Gaza. I think the top set of heroes would be on the front lines trying to save lives and bring an end to this genocide. The people in the sabotage section would be basically taking the law into their own hands to protect people, even though they're doing it indirectly. The people who protect protesters are helping protect the people who are trying to protect indirectly. So you can see how these are all a layer removed. The diplomacy stuff, it's a bit of a joke. But anyway, the apolitical spectrum, at least the ones that were apolitical, the majority of this section is just the people who would not be on Earth or aware of what's happening on Earth. But the apolitical people are really just the least heroic of the heroes in the Marvel Universe. Once we get down to the heroes that would engage in martial law or would straight up join the IDF or help fund and supply arm these genociders, they're the worst people and they are basically evil. And I know that the martial law characters like War Machine and Captain Marvel might be stretching it, but at the same time, if there were any heroes that would basically turn against the citizens they were sworn to protect, it would be these guys. That's my ranking of all this, and I hope you enjoyed this. And the video ends now.